All right, team, welcome to another episode of the Exceptional Leadership Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Matt Hamilton. Delighted to have your company with me once again from wherever you might be tuning into the show from. Now, today's episode is all about how we as leaders can better position ourselves and our teams to get what we want and what we need. And what I mean by that is oftentimes, yes, we're in a position of leadership, but that doesn't mean that we have free rein to pull all the strings and do whatever we want when it comes to changes around the organization or the business. That might include staffing, budget allocation, so on and so forth. Oftentimes, we are relying on our superiors to help approve those requests and help get us the result accordingly. Now, there's a way to do that more effectively from our perspective, and that is rather than going to our superiors and saying, I need this or I want this, it's about going to them and making their decision easy. And the way we do that is by evidencing the ask, okay? Giving a really good, well-reasoned line of thought and reasoning that helps them to pull the trigger and give us what we want and need a lot more easily. You have to remember that our superiors also answer to their superiors. Everybody has a boss, right? So we need to make their job as easy for them as possible so that when their bosses question them on why they approve something, they can quite easily bring up the evidence-based piece of reasoning. That might be a business case, a briefing note, so on and so forth. They can bring that up and they can evidence the reason quite easily behind why they made the decision to approve the request. So we need to keep that in mind. So what I'll do is, as we so often like to, we'll use an example from corporate history to help illustrate the point before we get into the body of the podcast. And I thought we'd use one of the most famous companies ever to do it, which is PepsiCo. And we'll have a look at how their CEO in 2006 decided to go about asking a request of the board to dramatically change the direction of the business. So without further ado, here we go. The PepsiCo story. When Indra Nooyi became CEO of PepsiCo in 2006, she faced a difficult problem. PepsiCo was extremely successful because of products such as Pepsi, Lay's, Doritos, and other traditional snack and beverage brands. But Nooyi could see that the environment around the company was changing. Consumers were becoming more concerned about health, nutrition, and obesity, while governments and public health organizations were putting increasing pressure on food and beverage companies. Nooyi could have gone to the board and said, I think we need to make healthier products. We need to change our portfolio. But that would have been an opinion, and opinions are easy for senior executives to challenge. So instead, she built the argument around evidence. She looked at demographics and consumer trends, the growing demand for healthier choices, the changing regulatory environment, and the long-term risks of relying too heavily on traditional snacks and sugary drinks. She also looked at the opportunity. If consumer preferences were changing, PepsiCo could either lose relevance or position itself to benefit from the change. Her argument instead became much bigger than we should sell healthier food. It became the market is changing, consumer preferences are changing, the regulatory environment is also changing. Therefore, our current portfolio creates a long-term business risk. But if we invest now in healthier products and categories, we can protect the company and create new sources of growth. That evidence allowed her to persuade the organization to invest heavily in what became known as her Performance with Purpose strategy, improving the nutritional profile of products while continuing to deliver business performance. The important leadership lesson here is how she went about asking. She didn't just walk into the room and say, I need you to give me money for healthier products. She effectively said, here's the evidence of where the market is going. Here's what happens to our business if we don't respond. Here is the opportunity if we do. And here's the investment that I'm asking you to make accordingly. That is a fundamentally different way of influencing senior stakeholders. The boss isn't asking people to support the idea. Instead, they're presenting evidence that makes the idea really difficult to ignore. And that is a very useful model for just about any manager today. So there's PepsiCo. Now, when I was reading that example, a thought came to mind of other businesses who have gone down the same track, and a good one is McDonald's. You might recall that McDonald's used to be pretty much Big Macs, fries, chicken nuggets, ice cream, thick shakes, so on and so forth. And then, I don't know when it was a while ago now, but they started introducing the Healthy Choices menu. And that is likely a response to changing demographic and consumer trends. So it is something that we can see play out on the biggest stage when it comes to corporations, right? Big changes in direction and likely things that were instigated through evidence-based thinking and presentations to affect those changes. So let's bring it back down to our level, okay? Here's the mission, here's the synopsis. I don't want you guys to just come to your boss and say, hey boss, we need to fix X, or I want Y. All right? I want you to evidence very specifically the reason behind your ask. Now, the best way to do this is to pull stats and figures, so hard data that can't be argued with, objective fact, so not your opinion. And the best thing to do with that is to arrange it in a nice briefing note or business case. Neither of those things need to be great big 50-page documents. It could just be a nicely presented, well stepped out Word document of a few pages. That's all you need. Something that a boss can have on file, come back to read and remind themselves of at a later date. And they will need to do that because they will likely have to consult their superiors before freeing up budget, so on and so forth. So I want you to concentrate on making their lives as easy as possible. And if you can do that, you will become a treasured member of the management team, because they'll go, I can trust this person. This person doesn't just come to me like everybody else and say, I want this or I want that. They actually make my job easy, and they put in the work, and they evidence the reason behind what they're asking me to do, which makes my life easier. So think about what you would want your team to do if they're asking you for something, and I want you to replicate that. Let's play with an example. Let's say we're in a hospitality or maintenance sort of setting, okay? Let's say you've noticed a trend where you're actually okay with the work order load as long as no one calls in sick or no one takes leave. Let's play with this example. You might be preparing this briefing note to ask your boss for funding to recruit one extra technician. And in preparation for that, you might log onto the work order system and note that work orders are up 50% in the last 6 months. And that trend shows no sign of slowing down. It's at least going to stay steady. As I said, we're okay most of the time so long as nobody takes leave. But people do take leave. And when they do, that means work orders per person per day on average, instead of being at 15, which is manageable, they actually jump up to sometimes greater than 20 per person per day for the duration of the leave that our employee takes. And God forbid there's more than one employee that wants annual leave at the same time, then we're really in trouble. And the consequence of that work order workload per person jumping up when we have periods of employees taking leave is that not only does it work them harder by giving them at least 20 per day on average to do, which is a big ask for anybody in this setting, but it means the business is put at risk because it means we could fail an attendance KPI, which results in two things. Number one, a financial penalty as per the terms of our agreement with our customer. For every work order attendance KPI we fail, pick a value, it could be $5,000, $10,000. I've worked in organisations with KPIs of that magnitude. But above and beyond that, it's not just a financial implication for the business, it now starts to affect our reputation with our customer, which could in turn affect our ability to win new contracts with other customers. So that's a big issue. But we could also work into our business case that above and beyond that, we see an increase in sick leave when we're asking our people to increase their workload to cover annual leave. In fact, what we could do is we could present the sick leave data and show that trend from the last 6 months by accessing our leave system. And we could sum up that briefing note by saying that while all of those things are coming together to present a pretty compelling need to head out to market and recruit, we need to do this in a timely fashion, because every month that goes by where we fail to address this issue, we risk losing staff to competitors because they get fed up, sick of the fact that management isn't doing anything, and they decide to move somewhere else for a change, maybe in the hope that the workload will be more manageable and the workplace will be more well-staffed. What does that do? Well, it means that when we lose staff, not only are we in an even worse position than we were before, with those average work orders per person per day jumping up even further because we're losing people permanently now, but that means it's going to cost us all at the management level time and the business money while we go and recruit to fill those positions that have left. And then you have to bear in mind that on average, around here, it takes about 3 months to get someone fully trained and up to speed, pulling their own weight. And while they do that, it is a drag on everybody. So the conclusion from a business note or briefing note perspective is along the lines of, if we fail to take action in a timely manner, we risk at the very least, so best case scenario, having to replace one or more people and dedicate significant time and financial resources to getting the new people up to speed and contributing at full capacity. That is very, very different than going to your boss and saying, hey, I want money to hire a new person. The first thing they're going to ask is, why? And if you don't have an answer ready to go, they're far less likely to have the confidence required to pull the trigger on that investment. And it is an investment. It is serious business hiring new people. Managers want to know before they make a financial commitment like that, that you are working efficiently, that there are ways to unlock those efficiencies and that they haven't been ignored. Because so often people go, I'm so busy, I'm so crazy busy. And then when you ask why, or you ask them to show you what they've got on their plate so that you can better help them, it turns out that there's not a lot going on sometimes. It's just that the person is poorly organised, or perhaps doesn't respond really well to stress and tends to catastrophize a little bit. That's very real. I've seen that a lot as a manager. So what you want to do is anticipate that doubt and that concern, get ahead of it, and actually evidence the need for what you're asking. And I promise you, if you can do that, you will be a respected and trusted leadership figure in your organization. Guys, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me once again. If you haven't already, follow the show or subscribe to the show. Leave us a 5-star review. Please don't think that that doesn't mean anything. It is actually incredibly helpful. It's one of the primary drivers behind getting podcasts like this to grow. So please, if you have 10 seconds, whatever podcast app you listen to the show on, please jump in and leave a nice written review or a 5-star review, or both. That'd be incredible. And I would be very grateful. Like the show, tell a friend, share it far and wide. All those little things help immensely, and I would be very, very grateful for you doing that. Before I sign off, don't forget to visit www.exceptionalleadershippodcast.com. We've got blogs up there for your enjoyment and a whole bunch of other content, but also you'll have the opportunity to sign up for the brief, which is a newsletter that I send out every fortnight or so with some leadership snippets and just general thoughts that I have on the topic every fortnight or so. So if you want to become a part of that community, please jump in and sign up. Guys, until next time, I'll see you later.